So many things have ruined my childhood, so I go online to bitch and cry. It feels like all of Hollywood is up against me. They even made Optimus fly. New versions of what I grew up with are being remade, rebooted and retried. My adolescence is under attack now. I think that a part of me has died. Aliens, Predators, Marvel, DC, maybe it doesn't all quite stick.
Okay, well, except maybe for that Jar Jar Binks.
Could it be I've misunderstood? This podcast ruined my childhood.
Hello everyone and welcome to This Podcast Ruined My Childhood. I'm Phil and with me is Eric.
Where is she? Rachel! Sorry, Robert. She's not in this movie. Oh. Vengeance, then. Vengeance.
Fear is a tool. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, watching, waiting to strike. But I am the shadows.
I got you!
I'm vengeance.
We're going to be talking about the new Batman movie, but with us we have a very special guest this week, and he joins us from his own podcast where he talks about Batman, but Andy and I go way back. We've known each other for many years. So Andy DiGenova, welcome again to This Podcast Ruined My Childhood.
Thanks for having me back to talk about Batman. Oh wait, was I supposed to do a Batman voice? Wait, where is she? No, yeah, where's the trigger? What have you done? Which movie is it from? I don't know. No, thanks for having me back. It's good to be back. It's weird that I've been on a few times, but this is the first time I'm actually talking about Batman, my one true love. So it's exciting to be here. Thanks, and nice to finally meet Eric. I've listened to Eric, but now we actually are talking to each other.
Yes, and I've listened to you as well.
Amazing.
Well, all bets are off.
I said right before the podcast started, worlds colliding for me. We're really here to talk about The Batman, which is the new 2022 release with Robert Pattinson as the titular character. As we do on the show, we generally talk about the fandom that started it all for us, but we did a Batman quadrology episode with Brendan Lowe, your BatCast brother, one of your BatCast brothers, Andy, way back in our first season, 2 years ago, I guess, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody already heard what Eric and I had to say about how we love Batman and where that came from. But Andy, can you give us a really brief history of your love for the Batman?
Of course, I'll try to keep it brief because otherwise it's just my life story. Because my love of Batman starts from my very earliest memories. As early as I can remember, just seeing like a Batman action figure, superpowers figure, Batman popping up on Scooby-Doo, I was already like, I like him. And then in 1989, I always said I dated Batman until 1989, and then we got married for life because I fell in love with the character because of Batman 89, and that movie just completely consumed my world and my consciousness, and it was an obsession for me that entire summer, and I've loved Batman ever since. I have loved most iterations of Batman, from films, movies, cartoons, animation, video games, etc. If it's Batman, I'm already interested. Obviously, I have my preferences of which ones I like more than others, but it's Batman, so even the worst things, I say Batman's like pizza and sex. Even if it's bad, it's still pretty good. I'm still into it. I've been obsessed with Batman pretty much my whole life. I have a Batman tattoo. I am recording this in my Batman themed office, my very own Batcave. So it's not just a fandom, it's a way of life for me. And I do my own show, Holy BatCast. I've been talking about Batman on that show weekly for 8 years now. So
8 years.
If that's not commitment, I don't know what is. Yeah, 8 years. I started it in 2014, and we just celebrated 8 years a few weeks ago, which was crazy to me. But Yeah, for everybody listening, many of you probably already know me from Holy BatCast, so you've heard it all before. For the rare people who have not heard me talk about Batman, go check out Holy BatCast, and I just expound about my love of Batman weekly on that show.
Yes, you do. Sometimes more than weekly, but I guess now it's probably weekly with all the life events that have happened.
This is true. Weekly is the plan, sometimes less, sometimes more. It just depends.
Yeah. So we're just going to dive right in then and get to The Batman. So this film opened just a couple weeks ago at this point, and this episode is actually going to post pretty soon after recording, which is kind of rare for this show. So it opened at 134 million domestically, which is pretty great. It's the second highest opening weekend for a film since the pandemic started, Spider-Man holds that record, and then Batman comes in at number 2. But to date, domestically, it's made 252 million and 479 worldwide. And by the time this actually posts over the weekend, this episode, it'll probably have broken 500. It'll probably have broken 500 by the end of the day today. But it's got legs. It's doing really well. I've heard of people going to see it 2, 3, 4 times. So that goes to my first question. Eric, how many times have you seen this in the theater?
Just the one.
Okay. I assumed.
I don't always have 3.5 hours just laying around to go see movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this had to be. This just had to be happened to be just work out perfectly that I did have 3 hours laying around, and I say 3.5 because I'm including like drive time.
Yeah, you got to drive. You got to go get concessions.
Yeah, it's more than just the 3-hour movie. It's travel time. It's snacks. It's trailers. Mm-hmm. It's a time commitment.
So, Andy, you, I assume, once?
I've actually been lucky enough to go twice. So I went the first time. We did the fan first screenings on March 1st, and fortunately, my mother-in-law is here. Phil just mentioned life events, so Phil and I have something in common. We welcomed new babies 5 days.
Yep.
Within 5 days of each other, I think it was. So yeah, we both have newborns at home. And so my mother-in-law's in town. So me and my wife got to go have a little movie night and see the Batman. And then my wife, who is a saint and the best person I know, about a week and a half later, I was like, I want to see the Batman again. She's like, oh, it's fine. Me and my mom got this handled. And I was like, you are amazing. So I was able to go see it a second time.
Yeah, that's great. So for me, saw it once. My wife's aunt is in town. And so they both were like, go see it with your friends, just get out of here. So a friend of mine, Mondo, he's a big Batman fan as well. I've actually sent both of you pictures separately of some of his figures in his collection at his house several weeks ago, but he's a huge Batman fan as well. And so he and I went. It was his second viewing, but my first. And I have to say, I left the theater pretty happy. I won't say ecstatic, I won't say overjoyed, but I left pretty happy. And that kind of gets to where I want to go with this show. Obviously, we're going to talk of whether or not the Batman ruined our childhood. So let's dive right in and talk about our reactions. So Andy, I know on your shows you do spoiler-free stuff. We just go right for it. We go for the jugular on this. So
good. That's fine. Efficient. I like it. And at this point, everybody's seen it. If anyone's listening, you've seen it. Come on.
I mean, I've heard of people seeing it 6-7 times, which is just amazing. I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. He wears a cape, punches guys.
Yeah, he's vengeance.
He is. Some of the folks I deal with in Batman fandom, man, they've gone 8-10 times, and yeah, who's got the time? But that's amazing. Respect. Good for you. I wish I could.
That's a part-time work week.
Yeah.
So Andy, what are your thoughts of the film? I'm really interested because I think you and I think the same way about films sometimes. So I wonder if I'm in line with the way that you thought about this. So give me your thoughts.
That will be interesting. You haven't listened to my reactions on my show.
I haven't.
Okay. Well, great. Fresh. So I've done now, I guess 3 episodes talking about the Batman, and a lot of the fans are not happy with me because I didn't love it. But I did like it. The first time I saw it, I liked it. I actually liked it even more the second time. So I would even go so far as to say, there we go, words. I can go so far as to say that I really like it now. I just don't quite love it. There's a lot to like about it. And I love the cast. I love the characterizations. I love, honestly, my favorite parts of the movie are the nice character moments between Batman and Catwoman, Batman and the Penguin, Batman and Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Those, I think, are the strongest things in the movie, and I really love those things. But there are just a couple nitpicks I have that keep me from loving it, that hold me back a little bit. But I saw it twice. I would go a third time if time allowed. So I really like it. But because I am not, screaming from the rooftops, best Batman movie ever, best movie ever, because I'm not quite that enthusiastic about it. I feel like I'm missing out on part of the party, because there are a lot of folks who feel that way. And for them, I'm like, that's great. Like, if this is truly the Batman movie you've been waiting for your whole life, then that's awesome. For me, I'm like, it's really good, but for me, it wasn't this religious experience where I thought, oh my God, everything's perfect, knocked it out of the park. I'm not quite that in love with it.
So I think we're going to have an interesting conversation here, because it sounds like all three of us are on the exact same page. I will completely echo what Andy said. I liked it. I didn't love it. And I don't have major problems with it. It just was a solid film, but I would probably say I'm the same way. I have a few nitpicks with it, but I loved the entire cast. I thought everybody did an awesome job acting. I liked the interpretation of both Bruce and the Bat in this one. And largely, it entertained me and it was fun. But yeah, it just wasn't... It wasn't The Dark Knight. Not that I was expecting it to be, nor did I want it to be. I didn't want just a copy, but
right.
But I walked out and I was like, good. And I just thought about it a little bit more, and really I didn't even think about it that much more. It's like, I like this part. These are the things I didn't. But I gotta say right off the bat, I loved Robert Pattinson in the Batman suit. This is the coolest, sleekest, most mobile Batman we've had. Every other Batman just seems kind of clunky to me, and I've always thought it. Like, even Christian Bale, who was kind of a slimmer, faster Batman in The Dark Knight, it just seems like all the other Batmen are so slow and bulky, but this was like a slim, trim, like middleweight Batman, and I really felt like that's a mobile action hero.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, I liked the suit for the most part, and I liked how Pattinson filled it out, but I didn't love the cowl, and I think that's kind of a resounding thing across the fandom, is that a lot of people didn't like the cowl.
I mean, it's funny. That is one of the divisive things about this movie, is like, I don't love the bat suit. It's fine. It's fine for what it is, and it's one of those things where I kind of made my peace with it, and in the movie it doesn't bother me. It's just not my favorite. I just think it's a little too complicated. It's a little too clunky, just with all the panels, and it's just a little too busy for me. I wanted something a little more streamlined. But again, once I saw the movie, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It looks good. I'm cool with it. But yeah, that's one of those things where the cowl isn't something that is my favorite, especially like the big weird nose piece, like. But it's, that's one of those things where, on our show, none of us were in love with the aesthetics of the film in general. Like, we didn't love the bat suit. We didn't love the Batmobile. We really didn't like what the Riddler wore. I still don't really like what the Riddler wore. So that was a conversation as we went on, where we just were like, what? Just do the Riddler. Like, why does he have to be dressed like that? Why does he have to be dressed, and a lot of fans disagree.
Yeah. To jump in, sorry, but the Riddler looked like Hush, and that kind of bothered me a little bit, because there was even a moment in the film where he had Hush written across a picture, and I guess Matt Reeves was just trying to blend a lot of Batman together, but his mask was reminiscent of the bandages that Hush wears, and Hush is all about a secret in the Wayne in the Wayne family. And it just felt like he was combining the two. And I don't have a problem with him combining the two, but the Riddler is too much of an iconic character to really divert from who the Riddler is. And so that's one of the problems that I had with it, is the Riddler felt more like a non-Riddler, more like a serial killer. Everybody's comparing it to Seven and Zodiac, and
Yeah, that's what I've been telling people who haven't seen it yet. I said it's Batman meets Seven.
It is. Yep, that's accurate.
So yeah, I didn't mind the cowl at all, and I actually like the way the whatever you'd call it, the attachment of the cape kind of crept up behind his neck, kind of like a Doctor Strange-ish little arc. I don't know. I liked it all because I see what you're saying about it being like cumbersome and too many parts, but I also felt it was a very sleek look. Like it didn't look like it was too bulky, and it felt to me like almost like a catcher kind of has the uniform underneath, but then puts a few things on top. Rather than the other bat suits just always felt like a big, thick piece of Kevlar or whatever bulky suit. Anyway, I enjoyed it.
yeah, Batfleck is still my favorite suit.
Yeah, me too.
I agree, though. I didn't like the Riddler look. I don't think we necessarily needed to have green question marks all over a three-piece suit or anything like that, or a purple mask. But even if he was like kind of in tone with this sort of reclusive type creeper guy, you could have at least had like some sort of green sweatshirt or something with maybe some brownish khaki pants and maybe a jaunty hat of sorts that doubled as a mask, sort of like the way Catwoman had a hat, but it was also a mask. I don't know. I just think I agree.
And I think that's it. Like for me, it's like the
different
Riddler is
villain.
my favorite Batman villain. I love him. I've been waiting for him to be back in a movie since Batman Forever, and I was so excited he was going to be in this movie. And I do like him in the movie. Like I like the riddles a lot. I like the puzzles a lot. And I think that Paul Dano, once we finally get to him at the end, he gives a good performance. But at the end of the movie, I still feel like, well, I still want to see the Riddler in a movie because this didn't really scratch that itch.
Yep. Can I hop in with the thing that bothered me the most about the film?
Yes.
And I'm going to get through the nitpicks, but this is the biggest nitpick for me. And it is that this film, or at least the bulk of the film, all of the Riddler stuff and Batman stuff, seems like, and maybe just tell me I'm crazy, but seems like a copy-paste from The Dark Knight. It feels like, Matt...
you need... Brother, you need to listen to my episode.
Oh, no. Is that what you said?
Oh, yeah. Because I caught so much flack for saying exactly what you're about to say. Please continue, but you are not alone.
Matt went and watched The Dark Knight and said, these are my favorite pieces, and I'm just going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like all the things that are happened with the Joker in The Dark Knight. It's just, he kills the same people, right? He kills the mayor, the DA, the chief of police. He kills all of them. The Joker kills all of them. And now the Riddler kills all of them. He sends riddles, the Joker. He laughs a lot. He goes after the crime families. It just feels like the same kind of beats throughout the film. There's, the end. He goes to prison, and Batman confronts him in prison, and then realizes that there's more to the story and has to run away to go save other people. And sure, in Dark Knight, it's Rachel and Harry, but in this, it's like the entire Gotham elite at the Gotham Center.
Yeah.
But it just feels like it's very similar. And that's one of the things when I left the theater, I was like, I really liked it, but I feel like I saw a lot of it already.
So that's not my biggest dislike, and I would probably file this under nitpicky as well. But the whole thing, I let it go in The Dark Knight, but there are just so many parts of the Joker's plan that could have fallen apart at any moment and nothing would have played out the way he wanted it to. And I felt like the same thing in this, but to an even higher level, because ultimately killing Falcone wasn't even the
Falcone
end game.
in this movie.
The end game. What's that?
Falcone in this movie. There's no Falcone.
Well, for sure. Now you're nitpicking on the podcast. Thanks, Phil. This ruined my childhood. But killing him ultimately didn't really relate to Vans down by the river. So I almost felt like I watched this whole subplot of, hey, I finally got my revenge, which was to get Falcone, whatever, John Turturro out into the light. But it just seemed like, again, any part of that plan could have fallen apart at any moment, especially when he could have killed Bruce Wayne if Bruce would have opened that envelope instead of Alfred. And even if it didn't kill him, it could have put him in the hospital like Alfred. And meanwhile, the Riddler's just sitting around going, well, my plan kind of stalled there. I haven't heard from Batman in a couple days. At least I still have my Vans down by the river.
Well, I'll address both of these things because I agree with you both, honestly. The first thing is, yeah, the Dark Knight similarities are absolutely there. There are some scenes that were so reminiscent that they pulled me out of the movie. So that's why the first time I liked it less than the second time, because the second time I just was, at that point, I went in eyes wide open. I knew what I was getting. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities between this and the Dark Knight. I've definitely caught some flack for pointing those out, but they're there. Like it's the most influential Batman movie ever. How am I not going to notice when there are similar beats in this Batman movie? I can't help it. I'm a Batman fan. So yeah, when the Riddler sends a video to the news, this handheld video of him threatening the city and threatening his next victims, and then turns it on his current victim so we can all see what he's doing to his current victim, how am I not going to notice that the Joker did exactly the same thing? Right. But again, those things, that was my biggest complaint coming out the first time, because if it distracts me from the movie, that's an issue, right? If it pulls me out of the movie. And it did. The second time, less so, because again, I already knew about it. But I do agree with Eric as far as like the Riddler's plans. There's one issue in the fact that the Batman never stops any of Riddler's plans at all. Like Riddler gets to do whatever he wants to do, and Batman at no point is able to stop him. He never uses any of the riddles to actually stop someone from being killed. So there's that issue. Right. And then, yeah, it seems like he has 3 goals. Goal number 1 is to just bring into the light the corruption of Gotham. And then goal number 2 is this like...
Doesn't everybody already know Gotham's corrupt?
Yeah. But, and like... And then goal number 2 is like to get at Bruce Wayne, because he has this like personal vendetta against Bruce Wayne because they were both orphans and he felt like an invisible orphan and everyone's supposed to feel bad for the rich orphan. And then his third goal was like just kill everybody at Gotham Square Garden. But those 3 don't really overlap, you know, like it's 3 separate things, but they don't quite coalesce into one plan. Right.
And everybody said that this is the best detective Batman they've seen, but like you said, Andy, he is a good detective at putting things together, but he never did it fast enough to actually stop anything.
Right.
And so that was another point of contention for me, is that he's smart, he's great, he's cool, but this is the end of year 2, it seems, of him being Batman, and I guess he's just not good enough to stop the plan before it's in motion. But again, looking at a lot of comic books.
Or even get close.
He wouldn't have even caught the Riddler if the Riddler didn't let himself get caught.
Yep. That one random cop, Rodriguez, I think was his name, that knew, that had an uncle that worked as a carpet upholstery guy. Mm-hmm. And that's how he figured out to look under the carpet. Like that whole thing wouldn't have happened.
Looking under the carpet did nothing, though. That didn't help him get to the scene faster or figure anything out. I mean, eventually he would have heard the explosions or saw it on the news or you know, something, you know, whatever Batman does, Alfred, well, I guess Alfred was in the hospital, but somehow he would have figured out that there was something bigger going on.
Well, but and maybe it's because I only saw it once, but didn't he pull up the carpet, see the map, and then go online, and then whatever he looked at online, that video triggered the explosions?
It didn't trigger the explosions, I don't believe. But
No.
basically, that's how he learned the master plan of getting everybody, of blowing up all the different water levees or whatever to flood the city, to get everyone to Gotham Square Garden, where now all of his little incel followers are going to execute everyone. That's how he learns about that. That's what he learns it from under the carpet. That's what he learns. But as he's reading it, then all the explosions start happening. So he doesn't stop it. The only time you could say that the riddles helped Batman stop anything was then he was able to get to Gotham Square Garden and take out the followers.
Right. But again, it was just timing on that. That was going to happen no matter what.
But you're right. If he hadn't learned about it, the explosions would still go off. He would still see that the city is flooded.
Right. And again, that's not even him being a detective and figuring anything out. That's just the Riddler telling him, here's what I'm doing. But that actually brings me to the thing I did not like at all, which is that final plan to get Gotham Elite inside a big arena and then put 10, 20 guys up in the roof with machine guns or rifles or whatever to just mow people down. I felt like that is just too close to real life with the Mandalay Bay, with the Pulse nightclub, with even during the Dark Knight movie in Colorado. Like, people are really doing this in real life. And I get that movies reflect real life. It just, for me, as far as entertainment goes, just felt too, like, I literally, when that started happening and I'm like, this is what they're doing, whoa, I like glanced around like, where are the exits now? Like, not even as a joke. Like, I felt uncomfortable because it's just that, like, if he wanted to get them all there and maybe have had a quote unquote hit list of 10 people that he wanted to go after. So it's more of a target. It's, again, more of a vendetta, but just that randomness of it. I mean, geez, you could probably turn on the news tonight and read about somebody who went into a mall or a festival or a school and did that. And that, to me, felt like less creative than you could have been when you're already dealing with a supervillain. Thoughts on that?
I agree. I also think it was tone deaf in a sense. I loved the message that scene brought to the end of the film about how Batman became hope instead of vengeance. I loved that, but there's a better way to do it. And it should have been that he rigged all these vans to blow the seawall down, so Gotham's flooded, so now he also has vans in the garden. And that's what blows and kills everybody up. And Batman has to figure out how to stop the bombs from going off in the garden. And there could be more riddles attached to all the bombs. And it just felt like there's a better way to do the Riddler at the end of the film than what they wound up doing. And I agree with you, Eric. I thought it was kind of tone deaf. I thought it was a little too much with the way the world is, or at least the way America is right now.
Andy?
I honestly, that didn't even cross my mind. I mean, I think the point is valid, but that didn't really take me out of it. For me, it was more just like the intent of like, well, did you want to reveal the truth of Gotham, or did you just want to kill everyone in Gotham? Which one is it? But I understand what you're saying. I think it's a valid point. But for me, I'm like, yeah, but if it's just bombs he's diffusing, who's he going to fight for the finale? He's got to fight some bad guys.
Well, true. Somebody had to have. You could have had and again, this would go back to the Dark Knight, but, and you wouldn't have to do it exactly this way, but I don't know, it's going to sound just like the Dark Knight, where you had Joker goons dressed as police officers. You could have had Riddler goons dressed as firefighters and paramedics and stuff. But again, I realize I'm stepping on the same thing. I have not sat down to rewrite the Batman like I have with a lot of other movies, because I felt overall it was fine. And I also agree that for the big fighty finale, you needed something. I just wish it wasn't that, because especially up in the catwalks firing down. I mean, all I could think about was the
Yeah.
Mandalay Bay, and that was
Mhm.
like, ugh, that's just
Mhm.
too real.
Yep. And why is
Yeah,
it
it's
that
interesting.
these films have to have a third act major fight, like a Ultrons or Aliens or Riddler followers? Why can't it be something a little more cerebral, where Batman is trying to just save the day and needs to figure something out? He's already fought through the film, and I will say, the fighting is pretty brutal. It's pretty raw. You can tell he's a young Batman that hasn't really refined his craft yet, and I liked the fighting in the film. It was probably second best to Affleck's fighting style, at least in my opinion. But I don't know that. Why do we always need just hordes of villains coming out to be fought in the third act? Why can't it be something a little different or a little better?
It can be, and I understand that point too, but I feel like by that point, there hadn't been a fight for a good hour in the movie, so if it had ended without some sort of finale set piece, I know I would have been disappointed, because yes, I love Batman for the characters and the storytelling, but yeah, I still want some good action in there. And I even remember when the first time I saw it, when that final fight started, I was like, oh yeah, because it had been so long since we'd seen some action. So I get what you're saying. There are different ways to do it, but at the end of the day, like, if people are paying for a big superhero movie, you want some sort of big climax, whatever that might be. Maybe it's not just taking on hordes of nameless villains, but you still want a big finish, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
No,
Just that setup. Even like I said, even if the tweak would have just been, they're there to kill the mayor, the newly elected mayor,
right.
and her cabinet. Like again, targets, but random civilians ultimately, even though he was technically calling them the elite, is still, that's just a little too real worldy. I would have preferred, because they did shoot the mayor. She didn't die, but at least that felt like, more psychotic to me. I'm putting all of my rage and, I don't know.
Mhm.
Like even in The Dark Knight Rises, like, Bane didn't even kill all the police officers in Gotham. I mean, granted, he had different agenda. He just, led them, every single one of them except for 2, down this long tunnel and then barricaded them in, like the Piper of Gotham. But he didn't even kill them. He just trapped them. So they were out of his way. So
right.
I don't know. I just, but if I was going to say anything in the movie, I will firmly say did not like, it was that. And then everything else is, again, sort of nitpicky with his plan and, kind of convenience, how everything worked out. Plus Catwoman's involvement certainly accelerated a lot of what happened with Falcone. So most of that would probably not have even happened, and Catwoman wasn't even being goaded along by Riddler. So she was this chaos factor that Riddler wasn't even counting on. He was just using Batman to do his things. But really, Catwoman went in there to kill Falcone, and that's why the whole thing happened the way it did. I mean, what was the Riddler just sitting there behind that rifle, like, endlessly? Because he doesn't know, like, what's happening inside. I mean, Batman snuck in as Bruce Wayne.
Well, and Catwoman's the one who figures out who the rat is. Batman doesn't even figure that out. Yep. It's Catwoman, because she goes and finds that cop who's working for Falcone. She's the one who gets the info out of him. Well, and so without her, Batman wouldn't have even solved who the rat was.
And to that end, so Catwoman goes there to kill Falcone. Batman goes there, but he goes in as Bruce because he sneaks by the security guard and took his costume in. So all of that happens in 5 to 10 minutes, roughly, that whole scene in there. So again, did Riddler not see Bruce Wayne sneak in the door when he's sitting there behind the rifle going, all right, any minute now, Falcone will be in the light? Like, how did he not see, like, hey, I thought I bombed him?
Well, I mean, this just goes back to the mayor's funeral, too. The mayor's funeral, they were both there, and he was there. Edward, whatever his name was there up in the top. Bruce turned around and looked at him.
Yeah.
And then he walked away right before the car came through, crashing through the church. So why didn't the Riddler just take out Bruce and Falcone at the funeral?
Yeah. So so that means, you're right. Edward ran away to whatever room he had set up so he could get on the phone to do the riddle game.
Yeah, because he could have killed them both right there.
Yep.
Even with Falcone's like throwaway line, the guy who's more reclusive than me, aka why the Riddler has to go to such extreme lengths to get me outside and vulnerable. Plot convenience theater.
Wouldn't it have been funny if whatever room Bruce went to change into his Batman costume was the same room the Riddler was about to make the phone call from?
Well, they were both changing in stalls next to each other in the bathroom.
That would have been hilarious.
You just get a shot of both of their feet, like just putting on the different outfits.
Bang, bang, bang. Occupied. Oh, sorry.
I hope it's a deleted scene on the Blu-ray.
So not really skipping around, but changing a little focus here. I've read a few things where people felt like Bruce Wayne did not have a distinct character and he was kind of wasted, as much as Batman had a character, that his counterpart was just sort of dull. I would disagree. I liked the kind of emo, sullen,
same,
super, I would say depressed to a degree, like, vengeance-seeking kid who had his parents murdered a long time ago. I really felt that and saw that, and in the same way, the Hulk is an extension of mild-mannered Bruce Banner. I kind of felt like in this movie, Batman was the hyper-aggressive form of the depressed, sad, hurt, vengeful Bruce Wayne. And that theme kind of comes out too, because the Riddler even says, like, I was using you, we were doing this together. I was leading you, guiding you. And Riddler even refers to himself as kind of weak and powerless, but he needed somebody with brute strength to go do some of these things. I think both Riddler and Bruce had a commonality in that, although, of course, Bruce Wayne has Batman's fighting skills because he's Batman, but they both still projected into the Bat and used that, quote, vengeance in a different manner. And that's why at the end, like you said, Phil, that's where he realizes, I can be better than this. But anyway.
That's an interesting take on it. I think similarly to what you're saying, but I think that it kind of goes back to what they've said, and the comics have really heightened about Batman, that Bruce Wayne is his mask and Batman is the real person. And I felt like in this movie, every time he was Bruce, he was wearing a Bruce Wayne mask. And when he was Batman, he was more himself than he could be any other time. And that's what I felt out of this. But I like what you said about how the extension of the strength and the vengeance was both Bruce and Edward. I like that.
Because then there's the other scene too, and sorry, Andy, I get your opinion, but the other scene that also kind of exemplified this were the two scenes when he goes to the club as Batman, beats the crap out of everybody to get in, and then he goes back as Bruce, and he does the same thing when the door opens. He goes, "Do you know who I am?" And both times they're treated differently because, again, this is mild-mannered, weak, quote, weak Bruce, who, gets by because of who he is, where Batman is the brute Hulk strength of him. So anyway, Andy, what how do you feel about it?
Well, I'll say that, I've seen a little bit of that, but I have no issue with the fact that we don't get public facing Bruce Wayne in this. We don't get Playboy Bruce Wayne because that's not the stage of where Batman is. He hasn't quite gotten there yet. And they set that up from the very beginning of he's like, well, I don't care about any of that. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm honoring my family. So it's totally baked within of where Bruce Wayne / Batman is in his life here, where he's only focused on Batman. He doesn't see the value in Bruce Wayne. And so that's just not a priority. So I have no problem with how Bruce Wayne was portrayed in the film and in the story. I do have an issue with the fact, though, that they very clearly set up. They don't just set up the arc for Batman, which I think is paid off beautifully by the end. I love Batman's arc in the film. I love that he starts out as vengeance. He thinks that's his mission. He thinks that's all he has to do. And by the end of the film, he has to learn that he has to be more. He has to be also hopeful. He can't just scare the bad guys. He also has to inspire the good guys. And I think that's a great arc for Batman. It's one of my favorite things about the movie. But they also set up a very clear arc for Bruce Wayne at the beginning, where you have that conversation where he says, I don't care what happens to me. This is all I'm doing. This is how I'm honoring my family's legacy. And Alfred tells him, no, there needs to be more. You have a name to uphold. And then the conversation he has with the mayor candidate before she gets elected, and of her saying, the Waynes have a history of supporting Gotham and you don't do anything. So it's very clear that he's also supposed to learn that he needs to help Gotham, not only as Batman, but also as Bruce Wayne. And that doesn't get paid off in this film. I'm confident it'll get paid off in future films, and that's great. But I do think that's a missing piece in this, is by the end, not only should he learn that Batman has to be more, he also has to learn that Bruce Wayne has to be more too. And that, I think, is a note that's missing from the film.
I saw that exchange with the mayor. I saw what you saw, but I saw it more the naiveness of the mayor, because she says, you don't do anything, but she doesn't realize that, yeah, he has been doing stuff. He's just been doing it in a different way. And I think what he needs to learn is not necessarily that Bruce needs to care more, as much as for all the assets that he has as the Batman, Bruce has value too. So maybe another tool in the Batman's arsenal is, I can get things moved along a little quicker because I need access to this, or I need these people to do this, and I can do that with my Bruce Wayne money. So let me go be him again, as more of a tool than fully embracing and dealing with any real emotions he might have.
Yeah.
But either way, I loved Robert Pattinson in this. I'll say it. I don't care if anybody disagrees. I really loved him. I thought his Bruce was great. I loved him when he was Batman. I love the suit. I love the look. Just everything about him was spot on for me.
The cinematography in the film was unbelievable.
Yes.
It was absolutely beautiful.
That rooftop where the bat signal was, my gosh. It's like, I want to Google where that is and go there. That was such a view. That was so pretty. We had nighttime, we had daytime. Oh man, I loved it. Yeah, Phil, you're right. That I really enjoyed the cinematography in this.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think the cast across the board is exceptional. I agree with you. Pattinson is a great Batman. He's a great Bruce Wayne for what Bruce Wayne is in this film, and I think he'll be a great Bruce Wayne as that character evolves as well. He's great. I think Zoe Kravitz is amazing as Selena Kyle. I think Colin Farrell might be the standout as the Penguin. He is so fun to watch. Every scene that he is in is a highlight of the film. He's so great, and more of him, please. I think that he was a highlight. John Turturro was amazing. Jeffrey Wright was amazing as Gordon. Really everyone. Paul Dano was good. Again, I just feel like it took a long time for us to really get his true performance, because most of it was just, modulated voice and video. But he gives a great performance too. So yeah, the cast overall, I think, is exceptional. I agree with you guys. Gotham is beautiful. The way it's shot is beautiful. I really like this Gotham in being a hybrid of real, but still gothic, and has its own personality. I love that this is a Batman movie where he is Batman for 80% of the movie, maybe 85.
Yes.
It is truly a Batman story in that he is Batman on this case, and it's a week in Batman's life on one case. And I thought that was a very cool way to just tell a different type of story, where it's no, it's this week, it's this case. And the fact that we see almost the entire movie through his eyes, and we're following him throughout the case. I thought that was unique, that was different, and it was great for those of us who love Batman. It's I want to spend time with Batman. And that was something that was really cool that I think a lot of us have been asking for. Oh, and I'm sure Phil's into this. The score by Michael Giacchino is amazing. I love the score. But so there is so much to like about it, and we've certainly, picked out some things with the story or the plan that don't quite add up, and those are valid. But I want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due, because there's still so much to like about it, which is why I walked out going, yeah, I still really liked it. Not my favorite of all time, but I really liked it, and I really like where it ends, because it sets up a world where they can still pretty much do whatever they want, and I'm excited to see where he goes next.
Yeah, they had the Joker cameo at the end with Barry Keoghan. One other thing I want to discuss is the Batmobile. Now, there's a lot of divisiveness around the Batmobile going into this, as there is with every movie, because I remember when Batman Begins was coming out, people hated the Tumbler, and then by the time Dark Knight Rises was over, people loved the Tumbler. So
nerds are awful.
Yeah. Oh,
we're so hard to
worst.
please.
we're absolutely the worst. I mean, I've made jokes about people sitting in their parents' basements before, but I'm one of those guys.
That's just it. Yeah, we can smell our own.
I'm not in anybody's basement, but I complain. First question, before we get into the actual scene of the Batmobile, Eric and Andy, where does this Batmobile rank amongst the pantheon of other Batmobiles?
I loved it. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was, a realistic, kind of like it fit the tone of the movie. Like the same way the costumes weren't like real sharp, Tim Burton style, like directly from the comic, kind of comic-y costumes. The Catwoman was more of a utilitarian kind of mask, sort of more of a hat kind of thing. And like we discussed, the Batsuit, it seemed more real to me, that it was kind of a bunch of parts together, and the Batmobile just fit with that. It's like he took a muscle car and then threw a jet engine on it, and that kind of comic booked it up, of course, but largely, I thought it was sweet.
Interesting. Andy, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I'm going to be the other side of the coin. I'm so sorry. I really do like this movie,
You're
guys.
right now, right?
I do. I like the movie, but aesthetically, like we talked about with the costumes, like I just didn't need this another ultra realistic version of Batman, and that includes the Batmobile. Like if we're just talking like visually, the design of the Batmobile, it's my least favorite, because it just looks like a car with a big honking engine on the back. I need a little more bat in my Batmobile. Much like some of the other things I mentioned, I've taken plenty of grief for this, because I was just like, it's just a car. Like, give me a little style, give me a little pizzazz. Like I want my Batman to live in a more comic booky world, and I think the movie does that well with Gotham. But the car was just a little too real world for me.
I am right there with you. I didn't hate the car.
Yeah, I
didn't love it. Like exactly what you said. It had no flash, no bat flash, and that's what I want. And I thought in all the set pics we saw back in 2020, I was like, all right, it's maybe it'll look better on film, or maybe they're going to CGI something into it or on it, or maybe it's going to have like James Bond-esque or even Batman '89 Batmobile-esque, like something comes out of it and it just looks cooler then. And it didn't. It just looked like a muscle car with a jet engine on it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the jet engine's cool, and that blue flame that it kind of shoots, it's neat, but it's just nothing special. I would see that car in a Fast and Furious movie before I'd see it in a Batman movie.
I see what you say about not needing everything to be ultra realistic. It's just, I think for this particular film, it was even more realistic, I think, than the Christopher Nolan ones.
Mm-hmm.
That's why,
sure.
Yeah. So that's why for me, it fit the image of Bruce Wayne that was kind of portrayed too. Now I know this is Batman's car, not Bruce's, but the Bruce that Pattinson was kind of bringing to life, to me, felt like a raw, stripped down, no flash, I'm just going to punch you in the mouth with my supercharged jet engine Batmobile, and I don't care what you think it looks like. And that's why, for me, I hadn't seen any pictures. I think in the trailer, I think there's a little bit of the chase, and that's when the Penguin goes, I got you, and then it comes roaring through the flame, and I remember I couldn't really get a good picture of it because it was kind of dark. But when I actually saw it in action, yeah, to me, it felt like it really fit the film. And I'll agree, there was no flash to it. It was just a punch in the mouth.
Yeah. I get it, and I get that. And I think when I had to resolve myself with it after the movie, when I was talking to my buddy, I thought in my head, I kind of worked through it as it's okay because it's new. He's still towards the end of year 2. And I know there's a lot of debate of people saying, where is he in year 2? Well, he's in the movie. He specifically says during his first voiceover, we've gone through 2 years of the Gotham Project. And so in my head, it's like either the last couple months of year 2 or just getting into year 3. So yeah, maybe he didn't have a car to start. And maybe he, after year 1, he was like, you know what, I need a car. And so this is the car that he retrofitted. And so maybe in the next movie, he'll have something more Batman because he's now going to be more iconic to the city of Gotham. And he's going to be that hope. So he won't only want people to see the bat signal, he'll want people to see his car and hopefully his bat jet and his bat copter and his bat bike and everything. But
yeah. Well, hey, you mentioned the bat bike. He does drive that motorcycle, and that was the most pared down, stripped down motorcycle I've ever seen in my life. That, I would argue, could have used a little more flash, just because I would have felt like he could have afforded something with, again, a little more muscle behind it. That seemed like a real, like, kind of dangerous motorcycle to be riding, let alone in a bat suit.
At the end, it does have the little bat ears on it. And like, that's really all I need is I'm like, you just got to give me a little something. And through most of the movie, you're right. It's just a motorcycle. But in that last scene, I don't know if it's supposed to be the same motorcycle or a different one, but regardless, the one in the end, I go, yeah, that looks like a bat cycle. It's a more realistic bat cycle. They didn't go over the top with it, but there was just enough with that bat motif that I went, okay, cool. So I liked that better than the Batmobile. Yeah. I agree with you, Phil, in that like the flames helped a lot with the Batmobile. That I think made it look a little cooler because they didn't just come out of the jet engine on the back. They also came out of the hood. Yeah. So I thought that was something and I appreciated that. And I don't hate it, but I'm with you, and much like I felt about the costumes and everything, is I'm like, well, it's all still starting out, and Matt Reeves has been very open about, this is before Catwoman becomes the Catwoman, you know. This is before the Riddler becomes the Riddler, you know. And I think it's the Batmobile before it becomes the Batmobile, you know. And I hope that in the sequel, like you said, now that he's out there in the public, Gotham knows Batman, he's going to lean into that more, and we're going to get something a little more comic booky.
Yeah, that's the hope. So one last question about the chase. So how did you both feel about the actual chase sequence?
Go ahead, Andy.
Meh.
One word. Meh.
I was very let down by it, especially in the first viewing, because I had heard before the movie came out, oh my God, the Batmobile chase is just going to blow your mind. And I was like, great, because I wanted that chase to make me fall in love with the car. Because keep in mind, as a Batman fan, I want to love everything. I truly do. I don't enjoy not liking anything. And
you don't enjoy not enjoying things.
Right. Exactly.
You get no pleasure. You get no pleasure from this.
I get no pleasure from not enjoying it. And like I said at the very beginning, it's like I feel like I'm missing out on the party from all the people who are like, oh, best Batman ever. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I could join y'all, but I can't. You know, I'll be over here in the corner drinking my red Solo cup, just being quiet. But like, yeah, I wanted the chase to make me fall in love with the car, because even though I didn't love the way the car looked, I was like, oh, well, you know, if this chase is that great, I'm going to fall in love with it, because that's what happened with the Tumbler. I didn't love how the Tumbler looked, but that Tumbler chase in Batman Begins, forget about it. It's amazing. And I was like, never mind, I'm sold. Awesome. And this one, when that car revved up, which is a great moment. I love the moment where it revs up and the lights shine and you're like, okay, here we go. I leaned up in my seat and I was like, oh, here it goes. But I didn't like the way he chose to shoot it, with most of the angles being attached to the sides of the cars, where half the frame is filled with the side of the car instead
more than half the frame.
instead of the chase. Like there was not nearly enough wide shots or coverage of the chase itself. And I felt like I was mostly looking at sides of cars and then Penguin's face and Batman's face.
Yep.
And so I found it mostly frustrating. And then when I went and saw it again, it bothered me less. Because again, much like the other things, I knew what I was getting into. And I was like, okay, this time I'm going to try to not focus on the sides of the cars. And it was a little better. But I just, much like a lot of things, I'm not as in love with it as a lot of the other fans are. And as far as Batmobile chases on film go, it's not very high for me because of that.
Yeah. Eric, what did you think? I'm right there with Andy.
Yeah, I agree. I felt it was very tense in the way it was shot, but I also agreed there weren't enough wide shots, enough establishing shots. You had too much of the car, and honestly, parts of it, I was losing track of where the cars were in regards to one another.
Exactly.
Because I just had no reference point, you know. Yeah, like you said, you needed to wide out to go, there's Batman, there's Penguin, and then zoom in or something. But yeah, it wasn't, I didn't feel bad about it. I just didn't love it because also, I mean, we've seen enough chases in our lives to know how they end. So I mean, sure, did I know, you know, hey, maybe Penguin was going to get blown up, but that wouldn't have made any sense because Batman needed to talk to Penguin. So I guess I didn't know how it was going to end, but ultimately I knew how it was going to end, you know?
Yeah, same. But I didn't know that he'd flip over, 45 times and still be alive without a scratch. But the one thing that really took me, I mean, a lot of the chase scene took me out of the movie because it was disorienting and it made me not necessarily feel queasy, but the camera was mounted to the side of the vehicle. So you were in line with what the vehicle was doing, but everything behind the vehicle was shifting and moving, and it just felt disorienting. And then when they did the point of view shots from inside Batman's car, that then was a complete departure from the way they were doing all their other establishing shots. So you had this point of view on the car with action happening in a third of the screen, and then you go to what his view is, and it's the full screen, and he's going through these trucks, and somehow the lift falls perfectly right when he hits the NOS to go faster up the ramp and through the explosion. It all was just jarring, and I could never feel like I was comfortable in the scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just it. It was hard. It was easy to lose track of it because it was lacking those establishing shots, those wide shots. Mm-hmm. Inserting in a couple of the shots from the sides of the car, great, fine, cool, mix it up. I just thought it was such a weird choice to make that the bulk of the chase, you know. Yep. And it didn't bother me so much, but my co-host on Holy BatCast, Jamie, he gave them a lot of grief about that ramp just happens to fall down at just the right time. He goes, because if it didn't fall down, Batman was dead. Yeah, he didn't make it fall down. It just was very convenient that it fell down. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true.
Now, Andy, you've seen it twice.
Yes,
that was my question. And again, I kind of zoned out on most of the chase, about halfway through, because like I said, I didn't know how it was going to end, but I knew. I kind of was like, all right, just wake me up when we get to him catching the Penguin. Mm-hmm. I kind of zoned out. I missed it. You saw it twice. Batman doesn't do anything to make that ramp fall, because that's what I would want to go back and watch and just make sure he doesn't carom another car off of something or see the ramp. Are you're sure you double checked it? Because that's a point I want to look.
Yeah, I didn't notice him do anything that would have made that ramp fall. I think it was just one of those movie logic convenience theater type things where it's like, yeah, it just fell at the right time so you could jump through the flames, which is really cool, by the way. I do love the way it ends. Like you said, I knew how it ended because I had seen the trailer, but I do love that shot where Penguin thinks he's gotten away. I got you. And that car comes through the flames. I love that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just good thing that ramp fell.
And I can be on board with him being shot hundreds of thousands of times by bullets and them all just ricocheting and nobody ever hitting his neck or his chin. But this ramp, that got me. Going back to cinematography really quick, that shot, the upside down shot of him walking towards the Penguin's car from Penguin's perspective, was gorgeous with the flames behind him.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I would have changed from that is when he bends down to look in the car, still in slow motion. It just felt very cheesy.
Yeah,
it's like peekaboo.
Hello.
Yeah, I like that because what else was going to happen? He was gonna.
Does he bend down from his? I don't know. I guess I don't know how a superhero would bend down to get the Penguin out of the car. Does he bend down from his?
That's what
from
I
his
liked.
side. Yeah,
because he's a superhero, but he's still just got to do some things like a human, because he is just a human. He doesn't have superpowers to just rip the door off the car or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually liked that he just peeked down to look. It kind of added to sort of the boogeyman aspect of the Batman strike, because like the Penguin, you know what I mean? Like the Penguin was actually scared.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right there. It just seemed awkward, like, hey Oz, how you doing?
The following scene where he and Gordon interrogate Penguin is one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's a hoot, and I love it.
And Colin Farrell's just phenomenal.
Yeah, just world's greatest detectives. You don't know between Isle and Law. Come on.
I didn't even know that was Colin Farrell. I didn't even read anything about this. I was reading the credits at the end, and I saw Colin Farrell, and I was like, who was Colin Farrell in this? I had to Google it. He was so good and completely transformed as a character that I didn't even see it. Like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, but oh my gosh.
So Eric, have you followed the news that they're giving him his own HBO Max show?
Who? The Penguin?
Colin Farrell, the Penguin.
Oh, okay. I might watch
So maybe that's a DC show you'll actually watch on HBO Max.
I'm super into that. I can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great because I think that we all agree that he was just so much fun in the show, in the movie that more of him, please.
Yep.
And I'm glad that by the end of the movie, you've got Penguin, Joker, Catwoman, Riddler all on the board, so you can use them all as this version of Batman continues. I do love that Matt Reeves did that, is find a way to introduce as many of those different characters as he can, so we've got a full board moving forward.
Yep.
And that's what's cool about the use of the Penguin this way, because I've read a lot of comics and graphic novels where the Penguin is the money guy, the guy behind the guy. And he's just not really a physically, he's always a lot shorter. He's always way fatter. But this was actually a Penguin that I felt like fits what we classically know as the Penguin, but also is a little more mobile. Mm-hmm. And you could actually do some of this kind of stuff with them. So I loved everything about the way they did the Penguin.
Yep, agreed. Me too.
Touching off of my love of the Batmobile, how, like I said, it's just a muscle car, just a raw punch in the mouth. Kind of felt like it fit that emo Bruce Wayne-ish kind of image. And we mentioned it earlier about the score, but specifically I want to call out the use of Something in the Way by Nirvana. I love the use of that. It's always been one of my favorite songs by Nirvana, but it just had just that tone. And you hear it right at the beginning of the movie, and then you hear it at the end, and then you hear it mixed in throughout the movie in the score. But I felt as an actual song, and not an original song, but like going through the history of music, like what would be great in this film? And somebody found that. I thought it really set a good tone. Agree, disagree, other thoughts?
Matt Reeves said that he actually listened to a lot of Nirvana while he was writing the script. So they used it in the trailer, they used it in the movie. So I'm not surprised, because it seems like that was how he got into the headspace. But I'm not the right person to ask about this, just because I've never really liked Nirvana. So I think it's fine, like in the movie, but like as a not Nirvana fan, I feel like I'm biased, and so.
Okay.
I'm with you, Eric. I loved the way that it was used. Nirvana was like on the cusp of me getting into that emo grunge scene, which I didn't really love Nirvana, but I loved Green Day, and there was like those two camps. There were the Nirvana people and the Green Day people. I was a Green Day person. But I loved the use of it in the movie, and I loved the way that it kind of sounded and pulled things together. So yeah, I'm there with you on the tonality.
Because I don't think there's been any other Batman movies that like used music this way. I mean, of course, the original '89 had songs by Prince, but those were songs written for the movie. And this was like, hey, 1993, Smells Like Teen Spirit, or Nevermind, rather. Let's pull Something in the Way off of that. Let's throw that in there. It's going to set the tone for the whole film. I kind of felt like that was a really good move, because obviously we've seen in all the Marvel movies, they've been drawing, from the 70s and early 80s through pretty much every film, especially Guardians of the Galaxy, super heavy on that stuff. But this, I felt like they picked one good song. Like, what is Batman? And I don't know. It's just something, the lyrics not necessarily even so much, is just that, the musicality of it. Anyway.
It certainly fits the vibe, and I totally get that. It's no Kiss from a Rose, but, for this movie, I get
it. See, again, right? Like, another song that was good for sure, but it was written for the movie rather than, like, let's go back through the archives. So, anyway.
Right.
I could just picture Batman, it's 5:30 a.m., rough night, just finished up, gets in that Batmobile, hits the CD play button, and
the CD player blows blue flame, and then it starts playing.
Yeah. Something in the world. Yeah, I can just see that version of Bruce Wayne rocking out to Nirvana in that version of the Batmobile.
So there's one last thing I just wanted to, or actually two last things I just want to touch on. So I didn't like Alfred and Bruce's relationship. I thought when Alfred was in the hospital and Bruce was sitting there with him, he was going to wake up and Bruce was going to say, "I'm so sorry. You have been a father to me, and I'm sorry I almost lost you, and I've missed that. I completely missed our relationship." But all he does is he wakes up and this guy's coming out of a coma and he says, "You lied to me. Let me make you feel worse, even though you have a head injury and you almost died." So I didn't like that. But what I agree. Something I loved is the voiceover that we got. The voiceover of Batman speaking, it shouted the comics, staying true to the comics. That was cool. And I loved that. Yes. Since I'm doing love, hate, another thing I hated is the squirrel flying suit. That was terrible.
Yep, I agree.
And how he didn't die when he hit the bridge or the train tracks or whatever. And then I loved the old phone with the red light when he was trying to call Alfred, and the bust that was there. That was both of those reminiscent of 1966 Batman. So I love that those were thrown in. But anyway, sorry, I'm just now going on my little notes I wanted to get in. So, Andy, anything else you want?
No, just I'll second the squirrel suit. I thought it was so dopey. I kind of mind-boggling that they were like, hey, the cool thing about Batman is, he can glide and he looks like a bat because he's a flying creature. And someone said, what if he looked like a squirrel? It's just ridiculous.
Eric, thoughts on the squirrel suit?
I did not mind the squirrel suit, only because those things are real. You can actually use one, and I think maybe that's what they were going for, is a legitimate kind of contraption that can be used for gliding like that from high heights. Whether you could do it in a city or not, that's where I'll let the superhero-ness take over, but I didn't mind it.
Well, all right, Andy, did the Batman ruin your childhood?
Of course not. It's Batman. I'm always in. There are those little things that I didn't love, but again, I've got to go back and just say that I still had a really good time. I've seen a lot of complaints about the length, about it being 3 hours. Aside from the fact of just carving 3 hours out of my life to watch it, I didn't mind the length. I sat there, I was totally invested in it, and I enjoyed it the whole time. And I said this on my show, but I think that the first chunk of the movie is damn near perfect. And that ending is damn near perfect. And then it's the middle where I have highs and lows. But when it opened, I was like, oh God, I'm all in. This is great. I loved the way they introduced the world and they introduced Batman with the voiceover, with just seeing how that urban legend and all these crooks looking in the shadows. And I loved that very hopeful, beautiful ending too. So I was still really happy with it. And I'm in for this version and I'm excited to see what else develops.
It's Batman, therefore you're happy. Eric, did the Batman ruin your childhood?
No, this was exactly like Andy said. This was a Batman, 80% Batman movie. This is a Batman detective comics. Like some of the best Batman comics are some of the less flashy super villain chasing the Joker down kind of things. It's more Batman being a detective and skulking around and figuring things out. And I loved all of that. And one other thing just to throw in, it was a little wordy. So when Andy said like the middle of it got like not as perfect and had highs and lows, I think the lows for me, and this is probably why, I find it interesting that all three of us love so much of it, but can only walk away saying it was really good. And none of us can say like, I really loved it. And for me, part of that is the middle when they just got so wordy. Like he goes and listens to Falcone give a speech, and then he goes to the hospital and listens to Alfred give a speech. There just was too wordy in the middle. We needed things shown a little bit more than just flat out told. And
Explained.
That is probably explained. Yeah, that's probably where I would lose the 4-star mark and have to go to maybe like 3.5, 3.75. But did it ruin the childhood? No. It was a great version of Batman. I'm looking forward to the next iteration of the Robert Pattinson version of Batman.
Andy, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day and with your life with your daughter to step in and talk Batman for a little over an hour. So, Andy, where can people find you?
Well, thank you again for inviting me. Nice to finally meet you, Eric, and always down to talk some Batman, so I certainly appreciate it. If you want to hear me talk more Batman ad nauseum, Holy BatCast, it's my show. I also talk about Disney on Disorder, every Disney film, a bunch of random stuff on Real Fans for Real Movies, and Why Not Futurama. They're all part of the Real Fans Network at rf4rm.com, but if you just want to follow me, you can do that on Twitter or on Instagram. It's just my name, Andy DiGenova, ANDYDIGENOVA.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Eric, where can people find you?
People can find me in Club 44 hanging out with the rest of the Gotham Elite. Or you can find me at Eric_Walensky on Instagram or on Facebook, Eric Walensky.
As for me, the Batman didn't ruin my childhood. I didn't love it, but I like that this world has been set up for us. And Matt Reeves is a great director. And if he wants to continue making Batman movies, which it seems like he does, then I'm here for it. Along with the other TV shows and spin-offs that are going to come from this. The Penguin show, like, give me it now. I want to see the Penguin show on HBO Max drop in early 2023. So I can just get back in the world of Colin Farrell's Penguin. Or Oz, I guess, as he's known. So, yeah, it didn't ruin my childhood, and I'm here for this new Bat world that we've gotten. You can find me at Phildimo, Fildimo, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and now Letterboxd. I've had a Letterboxd account, but I've just started using it a lot more. And so follow me on there. I have really enjoyed getting into the whole Letterboxd craze. You can also follow the podcast at Podcast Ruined on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks so much for listening in. Thanks, Andy, for joining us. And we hope that this look back at the Batman didn't ruin your childhood.
Could it be I've misunderstood? This podcast ruined my childhood.
You're part of this too. How am I part of it? You'll see.
I saw what you saw, but I saw it more the naivete naiveness. I'd rather say naiveness because I can't say. I'm just going with naiveness.
We'll allow it. That's fine.
I hate that word.